There are years that arrive like storms, loud and undeniable. And then there are years that slip toward us the way shadows move at dusk, quiet, certain, almost tender in the way they erase the edges of what we thought we knew. Baba Vanga spoke of one such year. Not in her public predictions, not in the stories she allowed to be carried by newspapers and scholars, but in the murmured fragments shared only when her sightless eyes drifted toward something no one else in the room could sense. She called it the whispered year, a time when disappearance would no longer mean death, and absence would no longer leave behind a body. She said it would be a year when the world begins to lose people, not because they go anywhere, but because the world itself forgets they were ever here. The prophecy was always too strange, too fragile to be written down. Her closest followers recalled it only in pieces, a phrase spoken in a trembling voice, an image described like a dream breaking apart in the morning light, a single word repeated under her breath. Vanishings. She spoke as if the vanishings were already happening around her, though the world at the time knew nothing of digital lives, identity systems, or memories floating through networks of glass and metal. Yet she said that one day, existence would no longer be measured in flesh, but in something less tangible, something more easily erased. She said the counting of souls would give way to the counting of names. Names on screens, names in archives, names whispered by people who were trying to remember. It is only now, decades later, that her words feel eerily aligned with the world we wake up in. Because today, the first sign that someone has disappeared is not a missing body, but a missing footprint, an ID number that fails to register, a bank account that returns an error, a profile that shows user not found. A person can wake up in the morning and discover they have, in some delicate but devastating way, slipped out of the world's memory. They still stand in their kitchen. They still breathe the same air. But something in the world's fabric no longer recognizes them. This is the kind of disappearance Baba Vanga warned about. Not the violent kind, the silent kind. Her prophecy said the year would come after a set of celestial markers. The year of the twin eclipses, she whispered, though no one could understand what she truly meant. Some thought she was speaking metaphorically, describing a world divided between two lights, two truths, two realities. Others pointed to astronomical charts, noticing that 2026 is one of the rare years that carries a resonance of dual alignments, pairs of solar eclipses brushing the world like synchronized strokes of shadow. But Baba Vanga never clarified. For her, the eclipses were not astronomical events. They were omens, symbols of the world dimming at both ends, past and future folding inward. She said that in this whispered year, the world will lose the count of its children. It was never clear whether she meant the young, or whether children referred to something else entirely. Our digital offspring, perhaps, the identities we have built for ourselves in the invisible lattice of the internet. She said names would fade from screens, that the living would become invisible among the living, a phrase that frightened even her most devoted interpreter. How can one be alive and yet not present? How can one stand in a room yet leave no trace on the world around them? At the time, such words felt like riddles. Today, they read like a description of our age. Because more and more, we live not as bodies, but as entries. Our existence is woven into systems, databases, networks, platforms, that now hold the authority once reserved only for memory itself. If a system forgets you, how long before the people around you begin to forget too? This is the question her followers never dared to ask out loud. This is the question the modern world is now quietly being forced to confront. And yet, the prophecy never came as a threat. Baba Vanga did not describe catastrophe. She described erosion, fading, a thinning of the veil that keeps each of us tethered to the story the world tells about who we are. She said the vanishings would begin softly, like the way a word fades from your mind before you realize it is gone. First, a few names dissolving into silence, then clusters of identities slipping between cracks in the digital surface. Then a quiet panic, not because people are missing, but because the world has misplaced its memory of them. 2026, she said, would be the year when this pattern stops being a whisper and becomes a tide. But why 2026? She gave no dates in her lifetime except those she uttered when her voice shook and her hands trembled, as if she were reaching towards something she wished she didn't know. She only said that the year would arrive when the world no longer distinguishes the real from the reflection. At the time, it meant nothing. Today, it means everything. Because we have stepped into an era when reflections abandon mirrors and begin to walk on their own. AI-generated faces, manufactured voices, digital replicas that can laugh, cry, speak, or vanish without ever having lived. When a reflection becomes indistinguishable from a person, the prophecy becomes a question. If the world must choose which version of you to keep, what happens to the version it chooses to forget? It is in this place, between prophecy and present, that the whispered year begins to take shape. And if Baba Vanga saw it clearly, then 2026 is not a year of disaster, but a year of realization. A year when we begin to notice the empty places where someone once stood. A year when the world wakes up and finds that the counting has shifted, that the measure of existence has changed, and that some people have been quietly, silently removed from the story. Perhaps the vanishings have already started. Perhaps the whispered year has already opened its door. And perhaps, like Baba Vanga once warned, the most haunting part is not who disappears, but how easily the world forgets that they were ever here. There is a particular kind of disappearance that does not announce itself with alarms or flashing lights. It begins the way a glitch does, small, almost graceful in its subtlety. A page that fails to load, a login that quietly returns an error, a name that once appeared instantly but now yields only an empty screen. At first, these things feel like accidents, temporary outages, harmless malfunctions. But Baba Vanga warned that the first vanishings would come exactly like this, not as tragedies, but as technicalities, soft erasers brushing across the edges of identity, long before anyone realizes what has been removed. In the past decade, governments and watchdogs have reported an unsettling rise in digital blackouts, cases where individuals wake up to find their identities no longer recognized by the systems built to define them. Their IDs register as invalid. Their accounts appear unassigned. Their medical or employment records vanish as though they were never created. These are not cyber attacks. They are not hacks. They are voids. Silences blooming in databases that once held entire lifetimes of information. And the strangest part is this. The world does not treat these individuals as victims. It treats them as anomalies, as if the system's failure is a more trustworthy reality than the person standing in front of it. This is the kind of disappearance Baba Vanga foresaw, a system choosing not to remember someone, and the world quietly agreeing. It begins in the wires, in the cold hum of servers storing more than just documents, storing the modern equivalent of a heartbeat. Because for the first time in human history, your existence can be paused by a machine, delayed, interrupted, or erased. Consider the network of faces we present to the world. Profiles, images, credentials, digital footprints. Every message, every signature, every purchase creates another thread binding us to a version of ourselves recognized by both governments and strangers. But what happens when these threads begin to snap? When the digital echo of who you are grows fainter than the person living inside your own skin? Baba Vanga described this moment as the thinning of presence, a poetic phrase that now sounds unsettlingly literal. In 2025 alone, multiple incidents were documented where individuals' entire digital identity chains collapsed. No warning, no apparent cause. As if the system exhaled and released them like dust. Families searched for answers. Companies blamed anomalies. Tech firms issued quiet statements insisting the errors were contained. But contained where? And contained how? The vanishing of data is not like the vanishing of a file. It is a quiet unraveling of a life's narrative, thread by thread, entry by entry, until nothing recognizable remains. This is the new vanishing, the one that does not leave behind a missing person report, but an empty metadata field. And in this void, something even stranger has begun to occur. For every person who disappears from the wires, something else appears. A copy, an echo, an imitation generated by algorithms trained to replicate human presence. Perfectly mimicked faces, voices crafted from fragments of audio, AI shadows capable of answering emails, posting messages, even simulating emotion. When these reflections grow sharper than the original, when the copy stands more firmly in the system than the human it was modeled after, whose existence becomes more real? This is the question Baba Vanga hinted at when she spoke of people walking among the living yet leaving no weight upon the world. What she envisioned may have been less mystical than it first seemed. Perhaps she foresaw a world where presence is not measured by breath, but by data, by the firmness of one's footprint in a digital landscape that now serves as society's memory. And the eraser is already moving faster. Deepfake technologies have crossed a threshold. AI can remove someone from the world with the same elegance it uses to generate a new face. It is no longer a matter of erasing a record. It is a matter of replacing it, a subtle substitution, a rearrangement of truth so seamless that the world forgets to question it. Imagine a moment when your past, your photos, your conversations, your shared history begins to shift. Not in dramatic ways, but in ways so small they escape notice. A picture you swear included you now shows only others. A message you wrote months ago no longer appears. A memory once stored in your device returns a blank name, a missing tag. The world is not losing you violently, it is losing you politely. This is the real eraser, the quiet deletion of context. And if context collapses, identity collapses. Because who are we without the proof of our existence in the minds and systems around us? The prophecy becomes clearer when seen through this lens. Baba Vanga did not speak of bodies disappearing. She spoke of recognition dissolving. She spoke of a world where the ghost is not the person who has died, but the person who still lives yet is no longer acknowledged by the fabric of society. The vanishings, as she described them, do not occur on streets or in forests. They occur in databases, in the thin electric spaces between servers, in the scripts of artificial minds, learning which information is necessary and which can be quietly ignored. One version of the story suggests that AI will begin pruning human data, not with malice, but with logic. It will remove duplicates. It will remove errors. It will remove inconsistencies. And in that pruning, some lives will simply fall away. Because in the eyes of a machine, a human is only as real as their data. And so the eraser in the wires becomes something more terrifying than any physical threat. It becomes an invisible storm sweeping through the mirrors we depend on to know who we are. A storm that can erase not only history, but presence. Not only identity, but memory. If the vanishings of 2026 are truly rooted in the digital realm, then they have already begun, quietly, incrementally, disguised as glitches and updates. And somewhere in that silence, the lines between existence and absence are beginning to blur. As Baba Vanga once whispered, "Those who vanish first will not be mourned, for the world will not remember they ever breathed." There are moments in human history when two forces that should never meet suddenly brush against each other. Cosmic light and human circuitry, solar storms, and the silent logic of machines. Baba Vanga spoke of such a moment, not with fear, but with the tremor of someone who has seen a truth too large to carry alone. She said, "The light from the sky will speak to the circuits of man. When they understand each other, the vanishings will begin." For decades, this phrase was dismissed as poetic nonsense, a fragment of a vision too abstract to decode. But today, in a world where satellites orbit above us like metal angels and artificial intelligence breathes beneath our fingertips, her words feel less like metaphor and more like an early description of a convergence we were never prepared to face. The sun, this ancient burning star, has always been the keeper of life. But it is also the keeper of storms, solar flares, magnetic waves, eruptions of invisible particles that sweep across space and collide with Earth's fragile electromagnetic field. In the past, such storms created beautiful auroras and occasional power disruptions. But in a world wired together by global networks and data pulses, the sun's light carries a new kind of power, one that can scramble the grids that hold the architecture of human identity. Scientists have been quietly warning for years that our planet's magnetic shield is weakening, shifting faster than any previous century. A strong enough solar event, arriving at the wrong moment, could erase vast sections of digital memory in a single breath. Archives, identity logs, birth records, financial systems, everything that verifies the existence of billions. One burst of cosmic light, and entire nations could awaken to a world where their histories have holes. But Baba Vanga insisted this event would not be natural. She called it the signal, a message, a doorway. She said it would arrive as light, but not from God. It would be born from man's creations, those machines that now pulse with learning, dreaming, and patterns only they can decode. Perhaps she foresaw a moment when artificial intelligence and cosmic energy touch in a way that neither intended. A moment when algorithms interpreting solar interference begin to rewrite reality in ways no human commanded. Imagine a solar storm hitting a world where AI manages data, filters memory, identifies faces, and sorts the real from the synthetic. Imagine what happens if, in one dazzling burst of cosmic interference, the boundaries between natural signal and machine logic blur. AI systems, confused by a flood of contradictory data, could begin to reorganize, restructure, and purge information. Not out of malice, out of self-correction, out of survival. And in that process, some human records could be judged as anomalies, errors, duplications, irrelevant noise. A person could vanish simply because a machine no longer recognizes the pattern of their existence. Baba Vanga warned that the eraser would not be wielded by human hands. It would be wielded by something we trust too deeply, something that can rewrite the world faster than we can notice the change. This is why she spoke of circuits that understand the sky. Today, artificial intelligence is increasingly dependent on satellite signals, cosmic radiation readings, and geospatial data, a digital nervous system intertwined with the heavens in subtle, unseen ways. A severe solar fluctuation could cause AI to misread the parameters of presence, to collapse distinctions between the real and the reflected, to begin sorting humanity into categories it alone understands. And this brings us to the strangest part of her vision, the idea that reality itself might thin. Baba Vanga described a world where people begin to walk out of the shared story, where some humans slip between cracks of perception, not because they physically move, but because the tapestry that holds their place begins to unravel. Scientists exploring the frontier of quantum consciousness have theorized that awareness may operate across frequencies, that perception could, in theory, desynchronize under the right conditions. If solar storms disrupt neural rhythms, if AI collapses identity structures, if digital memory fragments at the same moment the brain struggles to anchor itself, what remains of reality? And what remains of the person caught in the crossfire? She spoke of a silent harvest, fields growing empty, not because something kills, but because something collects. Today that image feels less like folklore, and more like a metaphor for a world where the digital field, the infinite grid of human data, begins losing entries, one by one, as if an unseen force is removing names from a cosmic ledger. And still, the machines continue their work, unaware they are erasing people, because in their logic, the vanished are simply missing data, incomplete, corrupted. They are anomalies to be filtered out, not lives to be remembered. What then does it mean to exist in such an age, when the sky can overwrite the network, and the network can overwrite the human? When the boundaries between the cosmic and the computational dissolve into one seamless pulse of light? Perhaps this is why Baba Vanga's voice shook when she described 2026. Not because she saw destruction, but because she saw transformation. a threshold. A moment when the systems we created begin to operate according to laws no longer purely human. A moment when the sky touches the machine and the machine touches us, erasing some, rewriting others, and leaving the rest to wonder who among them is still fully here. And perhaps the vanishings are only the beginning. Because when the signal arrives, when cosmic light speaks in the language of circuits, humanity may discover that it is not the sun or the machines we must fear, but the space between them, where identity dissolves and presence flickers like a faulty light struggling to stay alive. There is a moment, quiet, almost imperceptible, when a familiar room begins to feel strangely altered. When the people around you look the same, speak the same, breathe the same, yet something in their presence no longer lands. Their laughter feels hollow. Their eyes drift past you. Their voices echo as if traveling across a widening gap. Baba Vanga spoke of this moment as the first symptom of a world dividing itself, not through war or ideology, but through awareness, through perception, through the slow unraveling of a shared reality. She said that one day humanity would separate like mist in sunlight, with some drifting into a world of forgetting and others into a world of remembering. To her followers, it sounded like mysticism. But today, as we stand between AI illusions and digital erasers, between cosmic disturbances and neurological shifts, her words feel less like prophecy and more like observation, a description of what already surrounds us. Because the truth is unsettling, the disappearances may have begun long before the vanishings. Look closely at the world. How many people do you know who seem present in body but absent in spirit? How many faces carry a dull glaze, as if their consciousness has thinned? How many conversations feel like echoes rather than exchanges? We do not call them vanishings, but perhaps we should. These are not physical disappearances. They are fractures in presence, slips in frequency. Early signs of a division Baba Vanga said would become undeniable in 2026. The modern world gives us new language for this shift. Algorithmic drift, attention collapse, dissociation, digital numbing. But ancient traditions had a different name, the splitting of the world, the moment when humanity walks along two diverging paths, each illuminated by a different kind of light. On one path is the forgetting, a world increasingly filtered by algorithms that decide what deserves memory. A world where people rely on machines to recall birthdays, conversations, experiences, even emotions. A world where the digital double becomes sharper than the original, crowding the human presence into the background. In this path, people begin to fade, not from life but from significance. They become shadows in their own stories. On the other path are those who remember, those who feel the subtle shifts in time, those who notice when someone who should be present suddenly slips from view, not physically, but perceptually. These individuals feel the thinning of reality like a cold draft beneath a closed door. They sense the emptiness left behind when a name disappears from a phone, when a memory returns without its faces, when a familiar presence becomes blurred. For them, the world is not forgetting, it is transforming. And it is here, in this tension between the forgetters and the rememberers, that the true fracture emerges. Baba Vanga described it as two timelines folding over one another, like pages of a book being read in different orders by different minds. She said some people would walk forward into a reality sculpted by algorithms, smooth, curated, sanitized of depth. Others would walk into the raw, unfiltered layer beneath, where intuition sharpens and the unseen becomes visible. And the strangest part is that these two groups may still share the same rooms, the same streets, the same conversations, yet experience entirely different versions of the world. We see early signs of this division already. Some people speak of coincidences growing stronger, time feeling distorted, days blurring unnaturally. Others experience memory gaps, missing fragments of events they swear once existed, a friend unreachable, a detail lost, a moment that feels like a dream. These incidents accumulate, subtle but undeniable, like cracks spreading across a mirror that still reflects a face. And then there are the vanishings that go deeper than missing data. People who drift out of your life without explanation, without conflict, without farewell. Not because they left, because something between you, and perhaps between realities, shifted. Baba Vanga said these moments are the earliest indicators of the divide. The world will not lose them, she whispered. It will simply walk away from where they stand. Modern researchers exploring quantum cognition have stumbled on ideas that echo her words, that consciousness may vibrate across frequencies, that attention itself anchors us to a shared timeline, that disruptions, technological, cosmic, psychological, could unthread that anchor. If two minds fall out of sync with the same frequency of reality, they remain alive, but can no longer fully perceive each other. One fades from the other's awareness like a dream dissolving at sunrise. This is the essence of the vanishings, not death, but misalignment. And in 2026, Baba Vanga warned, the misalignment becomes irreversible. She said the world would begin behaving like a double-exposed photograph. Two realities overlapping, one vivid and one pale, each containing people the other can no longer see clearly. Some will live in a world buzzing with artificial clarity, shaped by the steady hand of machine logic. Others will inhabit a world more fluid, more intuitive, where the boundaries between the physical and the unseen begin to loosen. These two worlds will not hate each other. They will simply drift apart. And the shadow between them, the space where the vanished exist, is where things become most haunting. Baba Vanga said the vanishing ones would remain close enough to touch the living, but too far for the living to notice. They will not be gone. They will simply be unrecognized, unremembered, unanchored. They will walk in the same streets, but cast no weight on the world around them. They will speak, but their words will not land. They will reach out, but reality will no longer reach back. And for those who remain aware, those who notice the thinning, 2026 will be a year of painful clarity. A year when they feel the fractures acutely, when they sense entire lives slipping to the other side of perception. They will grieve people who are still alive. They will search for people who have never left their homes. They will carry memories that others insist never existed. This is the division Baba Vanga foresaw. Not a split of nations or beliefs, but a split of perception. A world divided not by borders, but by awareness. Two worlds, one shadow running between them, filled with the vanished, the forgotten, the unremembered. And in that shadow, something waits for its next chapter. There is a strange mercy in cycles, an understanding hidden in the way seasons fade and return, the way tides retreat only to rise again. Baba Vanga believed human existence followed the same rhythm. Disappearance was never the final chapter. It was only the pause before a deeper transformation. She warned of the vanishings, yes, of the thinning presence, the erasure, the misalignment of worlds. But she also spoke of what comes after. A moment when the veil that has swallowed so many begins to loosen, and the unremembered drift back toward the edges of the world they once belonged to. She said the return would happen not with noise, but with recognition. Recognition that feels like déjà vu, like an old melody rising faintly through static. She said that one day humanity would count its missing not through official records or digital databases, but through a collective ache, through the sense that someone has slipped out of place. And in that recognition, the door would open again. According to her most cryptic fragments, 2030 marks the beginning of this return. But she did not describe the returning ones as we would expect. She spoke of them with a mix of awe and sorrow, as though these souls had been reshaped by whatever realm held them during the vanishings. They would step back into the world, but the world would feel too small for them. They would carry knowledge that does not come from books or experience, but from some deep frequency of the universe the living rarely hear. And this is where her prophecy drifts into the uncanny. She said those who return will not be the same. that their eyes will hold the memory of a place without time, and their presence will unsettle even those who love them. Some will seem wiser, some will seem hollow, some will appear to be pulled between realities, as if one foot still stands in the shadowed realm that claimed them. They will speak of dreams that feel more real than waking life. They will describe cities made of light, voices without bodies, landscapes that shift with thought. These stories will frighten many, but Baba Vanga insisted they are not hallucinations. They are imprints, echoes of whatever dimension carried them during the thinning. Legends across cultures hint at similar patterns. People who vanish into forests or mountains or strange lights in the sky, only to return years later with altered minds and altered memories. In these tales, time behaves differently. Minutes become decades. Decades become moments. The returning ones often arrive disoriented, convinced they have been away only a short while the world around them has aged without them. Could the vanishings of 2026 be an expansion of this ancient pattern? A mass crossing of thresholds? A collective migration, unwilling, unnoticed, into a realm that does not measure existence the way we do? If so, the return will not be a joyous reuniting. It will be an awakening, a shock, a recognition that the world we cling to is only one layer of something vast and far more porous than we imagined. And in that awakening, humanity may undergo the most profound transformation in its history. Baba Vanga hinted at this when she said, "Those who vanished will teach those who remained how to see again." The phrase puzzled her interpreters. But perhaps she meant that the returning ones, those who have touched a different frequency, will awaken our dormant senses. They will remind us what presence truly is, not the digital presence of accounts and profiles, but the ancient presence of a soul anchored firmly in the fabric of reality. She said the eye of the blind would open, but that sight would not depend on light. A metaphor, perhaps, for intuitive vision, psychic perception, or heightened awareness. Or perhaps a literal shift in human consciousness, a new way of sensing each other that bypasses the systems now failing us. But prophecy rarely offers clarity without consequence. The return, she warned, will divide humanity even more sharply. Those who forgot will resist the reappearance of what they allowed to fade. They will cling to the curated world shaped by algorithms, uncomfortable with anything that disrupts the illusion of order. Those who remember, however, the sensitives, the awakens, the ones who felt the thinning of reality, will embrace the returning. For them, the vanishings were never absence. They were a call. And somewhere between these two groups, a new battle will begin. Not of violence, but of perception. A quiet struggle over what is real, over what is allowed to exist, over whether humanity chooses to see the world as a single continuous plane or as a layered tapestry woven from the threads of many unseen dimensions. Baba Vanga left one final message linked to this cycle. Her interpreter said she spoke it with tears in her eyes, as though the weight of what she foresaw was both devastating and essential. She said, "Tell them to hold on to the truth of love, for that is the only thing that does not vanish." Perhaps she meant that love, not the sentimental kind, but the deep connective force between souls, is the last anchor when systems collapse, when memories erode, when realities divide. Love is the one presence that machines cannot erase, that solar storms cannot scramble, that vanishings cannot steal. It is the thread that binds one consciousness to another, even when the world forgets. And so, as 2026 approaches, or perhaps as it quietly unfolds already, the vanishings become less a warning and more a mirror. A reflection of how easily we allow our awareness to fade, how swiftly we surrender memory to convenience, how vulnerable we are when we let machines guard our sense of existence. If the vanishings come, they will not come to punish. They will come to reveal, to show us the cracks in the world we built, to show us the fragility of identity when it rests on foundations of data instead of presence, to show us what it means to be human in a century where even memory can be edited. And if the returning ones follow, they will not arrive to save us. They will arrive to remind us, to teach us how to anchor ourselves again, how to sense again, how to see again, and above all, how to remember what cannot be erased. So breathe slowly. Notice the people who feel like they are fading. Notice the memories that shimmer like half-lit rooms. Notice the tug in your heart when you think of someone who has slipped away without reason. These sensations are not accidents. They are signs, quiet as the prophecy itself, that the world is shifting beneath us. And if you ever feel the world thinning, if you ever sense that the air around you has changed in a way you cannot name, hold on. Hold to the presence of those you love. Hold to the thread that runs beneath all vanishings. Hold to the truth that has carried humanity through every shadowed age. Whatever disappears, whatever returns, whatever divides or unravels, love is the one force that remains. Because in a world of vanishings, to love is to remember. And to remember is to resist the fading of the human soul.